Welcome everyone to this episode of The Elevator, which you will know is about people who elevate others as well as themselves. And I can think of few people who have come to the United Kingdom and in such a very short space of time have made the country their own, but more importantly, beyond that, have helped elevate the citizens of this country as well as a more global audience. And Lakshmi Kaul is one of those few rare breeds who came to the UK and is like I say, a part of the social fabric amongst those of us who are regularly in Parliament, for instance. She was an assistant to Bob Blackman MP, representing the CII, Confederation of Indian Industry, working across UK-India relations, highlighting the plight of Kashmiris as well. And we'll talk about all of these things. So Lakshmi, welcome onto this. And the first question I want to start off with is, what made you throw yourself into public life? I mean, going right out there. Most people will be quite shy about going, working in Parliament and hosting all these events that you've done, bringing the community together, helping elevate others. What threw you into all of that?
So can I just say namaste to everybody? It's the COVID way of greeting, but it's more importantly the Indian way of greeting everyone. What threw me into public life? Accident. Really, I'm a very, very shy person. If you leave me to be me, I'm just better off hiding, doing all the things in the background. So I don't still consider myself a public person. The story pretty much, what you said, that I came into this country, but I came into this country as a dependent with sort of a little baby in my tummy. That's how I came into this country. And then, I couldn't find work for a few years. And when I decided to work, I started volunteering. So over the years, my background has been in public policy. I've worked with organizations like UN, International Labour Organization. So what really got me into public life was my roots, my connect to India, and the desperate need to do something about briefing on Kashmir and the misinformation that happens actively in this country. And it's a pretty rough way to begin the conversation, perhaps, but that really was my introduction to working very, very actively and very, very forcefully, taking pretty much the lead. There weren't anybody really doing any briefings or, focused work on the plight of Hindus. There have been people working on it, but not in the parliamentary sort of, in the public policy kind of manner. So not really working with too many parliamentarians. So I thought, well, rather than waiting for somebody else to do it for you and talk about you, you've got to do it yourself and you've got to be your own hero. So that's, I guess, necessity.
I think that's a very important point you raise, rather than waiting for somebody else. I often get emails from people who will say, oh, you guys should do this, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this. And the first instinct I have is, well, why don't you do it? And you're one of those people who just did it. And like you said, it's a cliche, giving voice to the voiceless. What are the things which, let's talk about Kashmir, which are the things do you think still don't get heard? Because we know they get shouted down and shouted down by very loud voices en masse who are close to any form of reason. What are the things that you'd want to get across that aren't heard often enough?
So, just like, what you've said just now, whenever I get people saying that, right, we are interested, what can we do? Well, I don't know what you can do. You tell me what you can do. You know your capability better. So each one has to have confidence that you're not doing this for me. I'm actually not doing this for the world. I'm not doing this as public service. I'm doing this because if I don't do it for myself, that's it. My identity is done with. There's so much misinformation that, I will be not just voiceless, but I'll be faceless, nameless, identityless, and I will not even exist anymore, for the world. I'm a Hindu, I come from Kashmir, and there are already a decreasing sort of number of Kashmiri Hindus globally, and we are a global minority. Hindus are a global minority around the world. So if you don't speak up for yourself, then there's nobody else who's going to do it for you. So on Kashmir, there's a lot of propaganda. It has been, a global propaganda, a lot of misinformation against India, against the Hindus. There's in Kashmir, what the Hindus have had to deal with is what you hear about in the form of jihad in this country. A lot of terrorism, die, convert, or leave were the slogans that were shouted out from the mosques, and that's at the behest of which we were rendered homeless. Our, you know, ancestors were maimed, raped, and brutally sort of assassinated, chopped off by saws and things like that. It's horrible. And then when you come into this country, then you see that you're peacefully celebrating Independence Day of India outside the High Commission, and suddenly you're surrounded by this mob. I was unfortunately one of those people who were surrounded. My sari was nearly taken off, by this guy who sort of reached out and sort of, harassed and sort of attacked us. And it's horrible. Then you see JKLF banners in the crowd, and you see supposed Azad Kashmir, I like to call them Azab Kashmir banners in the crowd. And it's exactly the scene that you've left behind 30 years back, and you hear from your friends and community. So what's happening in the UK is essentially almost like a magnified version of this terror factory that has been running in Kashmir Valley for some time. And people here, initially when I started working on educating people and bringing in the awareness on what happened to the Kashmiri Hindus. And you and I have sort of known each other a few years now, and you've pretty much seen me right from the beginning of this journey. I was actually told by some very senior members of the community that, why are you trying to internationalize an issue? And I said, and I had to tell them that I'm actually not internationalizing anything. It is a bilateral matter between India and Pakistan. But what's happening in this country is, rather than focusing on issues that are concerning you and I as, British Indians or British people, the grooming and other issues, people are focusing on bringing in false narratives, misinformations. Lawmakers, legislators are actually partisan to that, just because they come from, their heritage is Pakistani, or they have some connection with Pakistan. So it has been a very slippery, very tricky war against propaganda, and it's a battle of narratives. And that battle of narratives have to be fought with a lot of bravery, but a lot of courage as well. And you've got to bring out the truth. So it's almost like a dharma yudh that we're in the middle of.
Yes, no, my in-laws were outside the High Commission on the events you were talking about, and I know from what happened to them and from video recordings as well, what the animals on the other side, because anyway, uncivilized animals is what I'd call them on the other side. And I felt that the best advert for how our conception of Kashmir is and their conception of what Kashmir is to look at the two sides. On that day outside the High Commission, you had a bunch of rabid animals barking and shouting on one side. With weapons, totally uncivilized. And I don't want that in British society. I want people in British society to be civilized, or I want them to give up their passports and go to some hellhole where barking dogs belong. And that's exactly what they were. And then on the other side, you had civilized people who are cultured, who believe in democracy and in liberalism, don't want a theocracy where they're ordered by, and there were predominantly men who were barking at the Indian side, being told by a bunch of misogynists and racists and genocidal terrorist maniacs that this is the kind of world they want. No. And we don't want that in Britain. I was born and raised here, and we've stood up to terrorists for a long time.
Nobody wants it anywhere, unfortunately.
No, exactly.
We're being pushed out of, of the countries that we live in, the countries that we belong to. Alpesh, wherever Hindus have been pushed out of, they've never really been able to go back to. So whichever country, whichever region, wherever Hindus have been pushed out of, unfortunately, they over the last, 1,000 odd years, we've not been able to go back to those places. The only place that, unfortunately or fortunately, that we are actually able to say freely is our home is India. Even in the UK, there are no-go zones here, and you'd think that that's not possible. That's really not possible, but it's happening right now in front of you and I. It's happening in our backyards. It's happening everywhere.
Yeah. Well, I've seen temples in what the academics call Greater India, in Southeast Asia. And, like you say, centuries ago, when they've been run over and removed, the Hindu temples have been removed, and we don't complain. We say, fine, fair enough, and all the rest of it. And thousands of years have gone by, and that's all ancient history. But you're right, they don't return. And the civilization doesn't return. And most importantly, if you look at the region, and Lakshmi, you work on UK-India relations, you look at the region, you try and find me a major liberal democracy in that part of the world, which is a friend and ally to the United Kingdom and has British liberal values in the same way. There isn't one. There is no major player in that region. There is no counterpoint to hotbeds of terrorism in the regional countries, to hotbeds of communism, of dictatorships. And I don't want to malign the individual people, but the governments is what I'd malign around that region. And there's either liberal democracies or there isn't. And you'd agree with me, whether it's Kashmir or the region as a whole, we want it more in the image of somewhere like the United Kingdom or in the image of India. You either have values or you don't. Everybody and everything isn't equal. Moving away from the issue of Kashmir for a second, and you have uplifted and given those people a voice, and you will continue doing so in Britain and better informing our parliament. Like you said, better informing our parliament. But your sort of broader work on UK-India relations, commercial as well as human rights related. What are your plans for the future? What drives that as well?
So my love for India really drives everything I do. I'm first an Indian, then perhaps an Hindu, then I'm something else. These are the two identities that I hold very, very dear. So that has been my driving force throughout the time that I have been here. So anything that ushers in, so UK as a country, as almost like a adopted motherland, has given me a sense of purpose, sense of duty. And India obviously happens to be my Matrabhumi, my motherland. So in terms of UK-India relationships, we know that India is the second, highest FDI contributor to the UK. I mean, it's risen up, and UK has some catching up to do. But then I'm sure that in times to come, India almost becomes like the go-to place for Britain. So my effort via my day job, which is with the Confederation of Indian Industry, which happens to be celebrating its 125th year of shaping growth stories of, thank you, of shaping growth story of not just India, but I like to say the countries that it has expanded, the Indian industry, wherever they've expanded their footprint into, it shapes the growth story of those countries. And it's evident by these statistics and figures that we share, 840 plus Indian companies in the UK making such sound investments and continuing to not just grow their revenue, but also continuing to grow the number of jobs that they create. A huge contribution. And these Indian industry representatives or companies are also, responsible for creating the Diaspora Connect, the living bridge. You and I are the living bridge between UK and India. Phenomenal contribution by the Indian diaspora here. It's I mean, I would like to pay tribute especially to the frontline workers, in today's time. We're all dealing with a very, very, it's like a crazy nightmare right now, and we don't know which way we're headed. So to keep your hopes up, to keep your optimism at such a dark and sort of, distressing time is very difficult. And I think the Indian diaspora at large have a lot of contribution to make in that story. So I would like to look ahead with optimism. I'd like to know, I know that there are possibilities across sectors, across regions. There's immense possibility. India is not just one small city. India is the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities. It's the villages. It's a lot of diversity. It's a lot of expanse of land, region, peoples, cultures, everything. And each of those variations bring in the possibility of greater trade and commerce, but cultural linkages, Bollywood films, you name it. Amish Tripathi here, who heads the Nehru Center, will tell you that there's a lot of scope for literature, culture, music, whether you're talking about the square mile, the financial, services, hopefully the legal services as well in times to come. So there's immense possibility ahead. So I'm looking at the UK-India corridor with a lot of optimism,
And of
and
course,
I know that there is,
it enhances prosperity of both nations
of course.
as well. Social mobility, helping lift people up. I mean, if you look at India 30 years ago, 40 years ago to where it is now, of course, there's a long way to go. And of course, Britain has its issues to try and create prosperity here as well. And I think when you look at also where, like CII does, looks globally, where have captains of Indian industry ended up? Heads of the biggest organizations. When Google announces $10 billion to help digitize India, that had a heck of a lot to do with the fact that there's these strong connections built by CII with people of Indian origin who know the country, and it's important that those sons and daughters are spread around the world. So, more power to you to get that wealth creation, that prosperity creation, lifting people up from the bottom across. Because implicit in what you're saying is wherever Indians go, they bring such huge benefits to the world and the domestic countries. And I know Britain agrees with that in having you over here. We're sadly running out of time. What final messages would you want to get across, whether it's on the business side or on the human rights side?
I'd just like to say that, because, obviously the City Hindu Network is doing tremendous work in bringing in that sense of identity, contribution, and, the work that us as communities do. I'd like to say that be confident and comfortable in your skin. I mean, look at me, I wear a sari every day. I'm very proud of my Indian identity. I wear it with a lot of pride. I've been running campaigns, handmade in India. And we like to say innovate in UK, make in India. And with the, Atmanirbhar clarion call by the Honorable Prime Minister of India, India will be a very, very strong supply chain component into the UK sort of industry. So just be confident when you feel that there is misappropriation and there is something that's uncomfortable, be able to speak up. And you will have voices join in. I mean, the whole Facebook avatar thing, Alpesh, I thought I was the only one finding it uncomfortable, that there isn't an avatar that represents me. I actually don't give monkeys to Facebook doing cartoons and whatever, but I do care when I'm misappropriated, when my identity is compromised. And it's not just a smaller issue of just a social media platform. It's about diversity and inclusion in the truest sense. So as people, as diverse as we are, we've got to also make sure that diversity and representation isn't just a tick box or a token.
Yeah.
Just because I'm a brown face, I will not just be included. Just because I'm a woman, you will not call me. If I'm capable, you will call me. But then also that doesn't mean that any brown face and any woman will do.
Yeah.
You've got to make sure that the right voices, the right choices are made at all points, at all times. So speak up, stand up for yourself, and be your own hero.
Thank you so much. And I should say that with City Hindus, we've launched something called City Hindus Voice, where we've shown, first of all, people how to create little videos and how to do it professionally, so they can get that voice out, that passion, like you say, and give them that voice, give them the know-how. We're going to launch a program alongside that, which is to help them write, how to write and get their views across as well. Because like you said, there's too many people who are willing to drop an odd email, but it's them. It's down to you to do it. And like you said, I love that phrase, be your own hero. We'll use that. Lakshmi, Kaul, thank you so much. Thank you so much for what you do for the UK India corridor. You put us who are born here to shame in terms of how much you've managed to do in a short space of time, and the rest of us been living here.
We're all in it together, Alpesh.
Well, together. You're inspiring, and that's really important. And I'm glad you said at the start, you're a very shy person, because there'll be a lot of people watching this saying, "Oh, it's not for me. I'm too shy. I'm too quiet." No, public speaking, that's for somebody else. Standing up, that's for somebody else. But actually, you've shown no, it's not. It falls on our own shoulders. So really a big.
It is your cup of tea. It is my cup of tea. It's all our cup of tea. Just saying that it's not for me is not good enough.
I love it. And you've been absolutely, truly inspiring in this. Thank you so much, Lakshmi. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.